It's fine.
What is going to be the live feed? The live feed is a feed of the interpreter as well. What am I needed for?
Well, after putting everything together for a meeting, we all wanted our
Everyone?
We had to be here now.
Everyone? You would have to get to Instagram. Brandon? Yep. Just a quick note. Sorry, this is it. Great goal. Maybe we should get a little bit busier, and if it does, during your talking, if you can't take a decision, come to the meeting. You don't have to, right? You give a young decision, and whatever you think that's what you guys. So, not you, but like that's what everyone is doing. Yeah, this is not for everything. People are supposed to do whatever their assignment is. But keep an eye out for things like email, if you do judgment, but you don't have to do right? Thank you so much once again. We need someone else. I'm really terrible doing some registration. Just go out there and say, and then, we get the yeah, I just want to make sure. Yeah, let's. You got the ones? Yeah, and, you need to get my. You guys have? No, I do not.
Oh, sorry.
Last thing we did was we put the sticker on.
Okay.
You want that sticker on the back? Leslie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm here. Dr. Reese is not yet. We were kind of together, but she had to do something, so
I know you can of the Britons, King of Britons. Look, Dwight looks like a man who has a lot of personality. What's up? Restaurants. Okay. Yeah. You guys
like down is great. It's right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you
Right.
yeah.
Ready?
Okay, because to put it out, over there. So we're thinking if you can have when you guys are drinking the same, and I'll look at
And then let's put it on that bus.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Do you want to take your jacket off? Can I carry something for you?
Yeah, which they do, but.
Can I take it? Oh, whatever you want. Whatever you want. Mark, do you know?
Yeah, yeah, we have a place to go. If he doesn't wear his stuff, yeah.
We'll share.
Okay.
room on the left, where all those are.
Okay.
Yes.
There's like smaller beer ones that are just.
Alright. So glad you're. Yeah. Very much it. Hi, how are you?
So why?
It's
basically- Yeah, well, because.
Let's, did anyone say yes at this time?
Switch it right on.
Somebody, I don't know, somebody, get
Right, why? I'm glad water. That's it, that's it. Oh, you already know, oh, okay, all right. You need it, okay.
There's cameras downstairs.
Yeah, very cool.
Yes. I'll let you, Brendan.
We're gonna talk about where, what guys said the room application for there.
It's a penalty.
I'll probably set some software up of the camera.
Get a seat for,
Are you guys? No. No, I'm literally your name. Volunteer. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Excited?
Yeah, we have drinks over there.
Sounds good.
I know, but she never had the robots. So we can move back. Yeah. But when they go up there, we're probably going to adjust it.
Well, it's their, anniversary, 4th year anniversary.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's actually.
Yeah,
Happened, so
I didn't know that.
they're over at ICE. Pipeline for all. Anyway, so I'm glad to hear. Thanks so much.
Thank you for I brought some exciting people with me. Some different people last year, but one was the same.
Yeah, you have something really important. There's another team. They're from the.
They might teach us. Oh.
Yeah, and then there's a team from CNI.
Oh. I'm excited. I didn't know that they were excited. Oh. I have the previous vice president of the robotics team, but he left the board. I don't know, it's gonna be awkward.
No collaboration. And this time it's another experts, all different. 5 completely different.
This will be exciting. Yeah.
What's up, Lauren?
Much.
Did you just come back from work?
Yeah.
Just 2 hours work? Yeah. What's so sad to hear? Are you gonna be here on Sunday as well?
I have not signed up for anything else, but you know, when I go and see.
Yeah, just stop up. We find the presentation. So the subject matter is for,
That's right, just force it until it
There's
goes.
tape and other materials, stuffing.
I think we'll be there with that in this way.
Wherever you want.
I'm keeping this, by the way.
What?
This chair.
My turn?
You can't.
It feels like 90 miles per hour. Mark.
Okay. Does he know?
You shouldn't.
I hope so.
Yeah, right, we are.
Okay. Let's see where we go. Well, let's
What
take it
is
out.
it?
Where does it need to be?
It needs to be right between.
In between the interference.
Yeah.
Oh, where's that? We need to keep this on the other side.
Yeah, so this is out there. Colin.
Excuse me. Oh, you guys feel free to.
I guess, yeah, thank you. That seems like a whole area.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, she's been kind
You got that.
I'm just here to
Okay, so I already got it.
Nice looking wall you got here. Huh? Where's Brendan? Brendan's out.
It is just, yeah.
Probably should.
Good.
Did you talk to your favorite? Yes. Do they need chairs? Do they want chairs? Do they not want chairs? Then you should change that.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna go out with that one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, chips and balls. It's not
Not a big comics fan.
a fan of relief. I'm a fan of happiness.
I don't know.
Now you know how I feel when I say I don't like stickers. They're just arbitrary. Like it doesn't matter. Oh man, they're like this there too.
Jeez, I'm always on the way.
No, I'm always in the way. Always blame somebody else for your problems. It's worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, I said this. I thought it like.
It's on the other side of Mexico, it says, last year, they were checking the schedule.
I did it anyway. There's a funny article today. Like, man regrets filling a plate early on a buffet.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out you want his face on plate. I love the onion. See me live literally every day.
Where do you see that? I'm like trying to hide it. So what are you, Superman? You can see this.
No, I'm just really tall.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Food is so close to you.
So close yet so
So
far.
far.
Are you guys commuting?
Yeah, how about you? I live in Philly. How about you?
I got Worcester University.
Okay. I live in DC. I work down there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in an R&D place. Are you in computer science or engineering? Oh, yeah. Cool.
You're like,
Hey.
I was born in like the Northern Virginia area.
Oh, where are you?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. What? Yeah. I don't really pay attention. Pay much attention to it. I'm from Cleveland originally, though, so yeah. It makes sense when I'm paying attention to sports. Little Cleveland.
Mark was like, oh, it's getting busy. I was like, sorry. Their turns being. Do you want to take turns getting viewed? I immediately stood up and left. Like, didn't even ask her. Oh, do you want to go first? No, I just left.
So if you get food out,
Yeah,
you'll hop on the train.
Yeah, I can try. It's been a while.
Have it easy.
Are you taking
I only want to see it. Yeah, right? Hey, that's
Not yet.
Sorry.
That's all they open.
How are you? I was talking
So, one thing is I don't know whether
Lauren, you want to play me?
I know. Did you see me heading over there? I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, there's actually
They're actually, these guys are getting ready to have this is winter. You're getting ready to have the organization very much. It's like oh, yeah. I had yeah, I mean, this is weird to say it. I know the dude is I heard that. There's no like backstory, like yeah.
Oh, it's okay. It was so it was beautiful. I don't know if you know about this website. I was after the whole yeah. And we just like chat first time
Me too.
Putting his number on the board. You want me to tell that one? See if there's nobody else. Wait.
Part of it did not happen.
Tie your shit up.
Thank you.
Everything good?
Everything's good. We're good to go.
Listen, make sure you
Oh, you want me to end this?
Yeah, because
Okay.
this is a lot. This is a lot.
Sure, I can stand back. Okay.
Thank you. Getting the table or whatever.
We're just gonna get started. Everyone wants to.
Well,
So my name is Adler. Thank you so much for coming and welcome. Before we start, let's move this table up. Yeah, so my name is Adler. You probably have been receiving really funny emails from me. You'll be seeing me a lot for the next 2 days. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our co-organizers. Lily, Dawn, who will tell you about it.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you all for coming tonight. Even if you don't make it to the rest of the weekend, this is really great. I won't stand in front of our panelists who are fantastic. I'm going to talk about Code for Philly in a second, but I want to give a lot of thanks to Apple for organizing this. As a person who organizes hackathons and just regular events and being a community organizer, this takes a lot of time and is a serious passion project, so you can tell that he loves you guys all. So if we could just like give Asher a serious thank you. The one driving it, the one putting it all together. So to tell you a little bit more about us and Code for Philly, my name again is Dawn McDougall. I'm called the executive director, but mainly I am just bringing the people together to do what they do best. And that's civic technologists who are using technology and open data to be empowered to change the city that they live in, to really make this place our home, and to make it the home we want it to be, the place we know it can be. And you're all part of that. So we're really excited about being part of evoHaX because accessibility is so important and it's not talked about enough. And accessible design is good design for everyone. So this makes me super happy that you're all here and you all agree with this. So you're going to hear from our panelists tonight. Super exciting. For Code for Philly, if you are interested in civic tech projects, we're on Meetup. You can find out more about us. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I'm so thrilled and fangirling all over the place with all of our speakers. It's amazing. But make sure that as you're hearing all these really quotable, amazing things to hashtag evoHaX. There's a feed happening behind you so that you can see what everyone else is saying. And I'll be around for today and tomorrow if you want to talk more about Code for Philly, but otherwise I'm gonna hand it back off to Ather to introduce her. And then I feel like there's something else that Ather wanted me to say and I forgot.
Drew, Colin? Yes, it seems like the theme is off again. What was happening during the there it is. So the feed is back on. If you guys tweet or post pictures on Instagram, just hashtag evoHaX and it will automatically appear. Will, yes. But as far as evoHaX, there's one thing. My mom and I have one thing in common, which is that we both chose a name for our babies, which nobody in this word can pronounce. evoHaX is one. And so I have had so many people saying it wrong. So it's evoHaX Labs, not evoHaX Labs, not evoHaX. It's evoHaX name. So what we do at evoHaX Lab is that we try to bridge the gap between technology and people with disabilities. We have been doing research on accessibility, and now this is our second hackathon series. The first hackathon was on accessibility. That was part of the technique we had in April. This is our second in the series. This is a bigger turnout. The last one is so excited, and thank you so much for being here. Also, really want to thank our sponsors before I forget the names. Zoom, Access Computing for giving us the grant for doing this. This is majorly all the funding from this has come from them. evoHaX has donated smartwatches, which is, if you guys would just, you will walk away with smartwatches. They are awesome. Also, a huge thanks to Independence Group Plus for being prize sponsors. We have Mike Nera as one of our panelists, who's the CIO of IBC, here with us. Also want to thank the Denver Community Center for providing the digital services for this event. Xavier, Louis Touch Tours, technically, Prime Impact, Exure, Black Tribbles, ABC Medical, Your Drinks, they donated a lot of drinks. So and the Science Center. And of course, Benjamin's Desk for letting us use their space. That was a major launch. Apart from that, so without further ado, I quickly want to introduce you to our moderator for tonight, which is Juliana Reyes. She's the lead reporter for Technically Philly. She's also the co-president of the Asian American Journalists Association's Philadelphia chapter. She's also won a few awards. The Philadelphia News Award winner for the community reporting of the year. And I think technically was also nominated in the Young Involved Police Entrepreneurs Award for this year as well. But one thing that is not something that I'm going to read from here is that Juliana does a really cool video blog on dreams, which I think is really, really cool. You guys need to check it out. And Juliana can tell you what the URL is before I completely push it. But without further ado, Juliana, Rich.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. I'm Juliana, and I work at Technically Philly. We are a tech news and events organization, so we do daily news coverage of the Philly tech scene, and we also organize events like Philly Tech Week in April. We're also in 4 other markets along the East Coast. So our mission is to organize tech scenes along the East Coast. It's super embarrassing that after mentioned my side project, I write poems about my dreams, and then me and my best friend make videos about them. The name is it's Dream d'Oiseau, which is like a French-English mashup, so you can find them on Twitter. Really so yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I don't know that much about accessible wearable tech, but I think that's what makes my job so great, because I get to meet all these people in the Philly tech scene who are working on so many different things, our panelists, you guys. And I get to learn about all of them and get this like human connection. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to say. So I'd like to start by having each of them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do and their connection to this topic of accessible wearable tech. And we'll start with Dr. Jamie Gracie.
So hi, good night, as we say, is Caribbean good night. I wish I was here right now. I am Jamie Gracie. I am an expert in STEM education at age 20. I actually work in 2 different positions. I am the Director of STEM Education at Temple University's College of Engineering. And so I design programs to accelerate learning in engineering and computer science. And so my connection to wearable tech through Temple is that our last 3 years we've worked on building prosthetic devices across the United States. And so the National Engineering Challenge is to build a prosthetic arm, and then to build prosthetic legs. And so actually Pennsylvania came in second in the nation out of Philadelphia for building prosthetic devices at the high school level. My other hat is that I'm the founder of Creative TechWorks Design Studio, which is a technology makerspace in North Philadelphia. We build wearable tech. Our hackathon that After is graciously supporting is also tomorrow. But we're doing something called Fashion Hack, where our students ages 9 to 21 have created wearable technologies to show the community who's coming in. So you're all welcome to see that online sometime, but I'm already oversubscribed. But that's our wearable tech. It's our way of engaging the community and understanding that there are opportunities in science and engineering that actually can produce products that help people. And so that's what we do. So look forward to having this conversation.
Leslie Birch. I would say that I'm a baker and blogger for Adafruit. So this is the kind of thing that I make, and I write tutorials on how other people can make them. Juliana has actually blogged about this purse. Now you're seeing it live. This is my solar purse that I made. Yeah, I can help with charging, like guns and whatever I want you when you're doing trips in New York. So my real tag for accessibility really is that I write about famous accessibility projects that happen around the world for Adafruit. So I know of them. I personally haven't done any, but I will say that anybody who gets any inkling for looking at hardware or discovering it, I consider it a gateway. I myself have gone through that process. I was an English theater major. I've been an actress. I've done many jobs. Hardware was nothing I had ever studied in college. So a lot of the beginnings that come for creating things like accessibility projects start with that gateway of Arduino or Raspberry Pi or simple microcontrollers. And so it becomes a cost-effective way to prototype. So I would say my link to accessibility is providing means for people to learn how to basically have hardware and get their projects out. And I recently met Dr. Gracie a couple weeks ago, so now I'm doing wearable tech with her kids, and we're all walking tomorrow in the restaurant. Yes. And it's awesome. Her kids are awesome. So.
My name is Austin Seraphin. I've been blind since birth. I started programming when I was 7. I am currently doing a lot of work in iOS. I'm doing app development. I'm also doing accessibility consultant, so if you're iOS app, I can help with accessibility. So I do a lot of work in that front. I love my Apple Watch. I have that here. And I'm also the co-founder of the Touch Tours, which does first-term blind training and consulting.
I'm Daniel Fine. I'm a recent graduate of Patton's Wharton School undergrad program. I'm mostly known in my topic at primary project is Glass U. We make all of these super sweet, fully folded sunglasses that you are guaranteed to look really good in. My official connection is a little bit of a stretch, but my other company is called Ghost, which is a follow-on to my younger brother Jake's diagnosis of type 1 juvenile diabetes. It's a mobile solution that uses geolocation services to know where you are, enter any of 530 different food chains in North America, or plug in 500,000 food items in the system. When you enter that restaurant, the menu pops up, the user taps what they're eating, and it tells them how much insulin they need. So that's my passion side, and overlaps with talking to you guys.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Panera. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Independence Blue Cross. So I've got responsibility for all of our technology, all of our systems. Really, I think from our perspective, we look more and more for digital technology to touch people's lives, whether that's things like our portal, just our general, weighing, or whether it's specific technology solutions that we're targeting to specific disease conditions. All of those things need to be accessible, need to be useful. Particularly when we think about things that are targeting specifically, whether it's an application or for diabetics or something targeting people with congestive heart failure. Always focus on how those things can fit into those people's lives and make a difference. Also kind of from a wearable standpoint, I think we're really looking. I'd say we're probably in an experimentation mode right now, doing some pilots here and there, really trying to figure out where it's going to really make a difference. And talk more about that as we go on. So look, happy to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. So yeah, I think we have a good range of panelists where some are focused a little more on accessibility and some are focused on wearables. So people will talk about both of those things. So what we'll do is I'm going to ask the questions for like 30 to 45 minutes and then we'll open it up to you guys. Maybe we can like workshop some ideas that we have for the hackathon this weekend. So to start, I want to ask you guys, what are you most excited about in the field of accessibility, like accessible technology, or wearables, or both? So any projects that you like things that got you excited. What are you thinking about right now in those things?
On the theme of accessibilities and wearables, I think there's some really cool research that's going on to create prototypes that can put sensor arrays in our clothes to monitor if we have congestive heart failure. If you have a high-risk pregnancy, you can put a sensor ultrasound up. Genevieve at Drexel University has actually now created textiles that have the sensors in them that only can wear so that the fetal heart rate is monitored, and if there's any change in that, the data goes up to a cloud, right? And so the pediatrician will know, what's going on with a high-risk pregnancy. So there are ways to combine, again, textiles, sensor arrays. Textiles engineering and creativity are things that get me very excited now. Again, this is, I think, in terms of helping Philadelphia claim the space around accessibility and around being able to support our identity. Juliana and I were just talking about this. Philadelphia's DNA is around making things, right? We're inventors here. We claim that identity, then we become the city of inventors. Inventors for the common good, right? For the global good. So the ways that people access using technology, using computer science, using engineering, using textiles and creativity, where those intersections are flowing, the fact that we're pushing it down, I'm as young as 9, is creating wearable tech. I think that's what really gets me excited. There's nothing this population of young people cannot do if given a chance. So those intersections are really exciting.
Yeah, I would add to that a couple of things, and I think the big break from the healthcare system, I think exactly what you hit on, is the ability to sort of monitor on a real-time basis what vital conditions, right? That you can see a spike in blood pressure, a spike in blood glucose levels. As an insurance company, we always sort of walk a fine line of not wanting to be Big Brother, right? And fear of, hey, are you trying to monitor me so you can kind of jack up my rates, that kind of thing. So we take it very seriously, but I think that's one really exciting thing, because I think that does just offer a lot of promise in the healthcare space. I think the other thing that's interesting from an accessibility standpoint is really it's not really coming out of the accessibility space, but it's got great benefits. It's really the voice control, sort of voice activated, you think Siri and other things like that. We're working right now, on our mobile app. We're looking to pilot actually some voice control with a virtual assistant capability, so that you don't have to navigate. You can kind of just speak into the phone, find a provider, provide ID card, something like that. One of the interesting things too, just along that front, we Independence, along with our friends at Comcast, about a week ago, we're at a healthcare futures conference in Chicago. And it was more of a thought experiment than a real product that was ready to go to market. But we kind of put everything together of really how technology would work in both a home setting and a discharge setting, and then into a home setting. using both sort of wearable tech, for constant monitoring, using voice control, talking right through your television and sort of getting real-time access to your care team. So it's pretty exciting, but I think that vision of combining the wearable kind of biometric monitoring with sort of an easy, kind of convenient way to get in touch with your physicians is really exciting.
Yeah, for me there are two, one on the hardware side, the other on the software side. For the hardware front, 3D printing, just the ability of what you can do with that today, whether that means that you're actually prototyping to go into mass development of the product, or frankly, more importantly, 3D printing is becoming the norm for many different hardware products, period. And that to me is pretty extraordinary. On the other side, it's something that is not necessarily brand new, but something that we've experienced with DOSE, which is when you have an issue of disability and disease, for us it's diabetes, that it's something that you can control without the need of some other system or application. What you really come back to is what is the friction between you, the device, or that solution, and the solution that you need in the end. So in this case, it's glucose level, dose, our solution, and insulin. And if what you've created or what the options out there are not they're not easy enough to use, so it's not seamless, then you don't use them. You lose customers, or you just decide against actually using a system. And I think companies now are learning what user interfaces are really necessary to be able to provide a solution where users that have those needs will stay on it and use them consistently, rather than putting out a product that people will expose themselves to for a short period of time. You guys have seen, we all see it when you launch an item and people are all hyped up for 2 weeks, like the Yo app. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, no, it's done. And that's something that's an easy example, but it's something that's applicable to any product. And it's interesting to start to learn about what people really want and make them something that they use.
Yeah, and in general, I would agree too, seconding all the things like 3D printing and voice control. It's really exciting to see how far we've come and how we have these options. 10 years ago, all this would have been possible. It's not that long of a time. And for people with disabilities, it's really exciting too, because we're finally able to build these really accessible systems. In the past, if someone wanted something accessible, and we would just say, no, it costs too much, it takes too much time, we can't do it. And now that's no longer the case. And I think that's really exciting. Specifically, I'm also, like I said, really excited about my Apple Watch. The Apple Watch is the first accessible watch out of the box, and yeah, it's really good for it. Easy to make, really sweet, accessible.
I think mine's a good tag on both of yours, that 3D printing is a great example of how things are happening worldwide now in accessibility. People are making prosthetics in like war zone camps now. They're literally bringing in 3D printers and teaching people in those camps how to make those products, and that they're customizable for the people that really need them right there on the spot. And I think the whole open source movement, not even just the 3D printing, but this sharing of files and designs, and teaching other people how to do that, which is why I like your group, that's really the key to success, because people usually can't afford these things. I mean, the medical system doesn't pay for everything. There's a lot to be desired there. So this really is opening doors for that. And then my second thing on the hardware end is that battery power is a huge issue, and we're just getting to the point now where people, I know, I can't remember which Asian country it is, but they've already figured out a way how to incorporate batteries within the texture of the fabric. That's huge, because your battery is usually a real problem. Battery consumption is always a problem. How to get the battery in and out is always a problem. So it's nice for me to see these changes happen. It's nice to see sensors getting smaller. It's nice to have stitchable controllers so that things don't have to always be soldered and be hanging in like 8-inch chunks on an environment or something terrible that you need. So that's fine.
Yeah, Austin, you talked about sort of this shift from the past. Maybe companies are thinking about accessible technology and then it's expensive. Now they care more about it. And anyone can answer here, but can you guys speak to that difference? Like, why do you think that's changed?
Well, the technology has become cheaper. Well, for something like the iPhone, it's changed because it's a matter of demand. If you're making something for a very small market, you're dealing with much different factors than if you're making several million. So in the case of something like the iPhone, or these other kinds of components that are being produced in that, it just makes it that much easier because we're no longer talking about building something just for a couple people. Something for the masses. I think that's a big factor.
Yeah, I would say too, I mean, the things like voice control, which really provide accessibility benefits, but they have much wider usage, right? Because I think that is a challenge if you're designing or building something for a smaller population, right? From a corporate perspective, that is always a challenge of how do you fund it, but as some of these technologies are much broader applicability, then it doesn't become, it's a much easier kind of question to answer, right? Because you're reaching a much wider audience and the demand is there from across the board.
I would say that legal challenges to support accessibility sort of push the envelope of the law institutions so that it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. Sometimes having rights has to be pushed through the legal channel. And I remember when 4 years ago, Temple started, is it 508? 508 compliant?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that part of it is the fact that there are a lot of folks who, through the use of technology, have more access to all these institutions. And that needs to be honored, and it needs to be respected. So many of the institutions now are, some proactively, but some because of legal challenges, are starting to invest in making sure that there's accessibility. So that's what I just saw happen in the last 4 years. So yes, we need more help with 508 compliance, so since you're a consultant, we'll have to talk later.
That actually came up on NASA Space Apps Challenge. Somebody liked our team and whispered, make sure you stop this. And we were all like, what is that? What is that? Like, and that actually helped our team win because we were able to define something about our project. It definitely was affected by that, and we were able to already have an answer ready for it. So it is helpful to know. Even if you're not designing, like, it doesn't matter. Any design should always be looking at those things, but it's nice to have it there. So.
Can you explain a little more about what the NASA Space Apps Challenge was?
NASA Space Apps Challenge is it's this worldwide event in all these cities around the world at the same time. NASA has this really well-run hackathon where they present different challenges. Like one of them in the past years has been like create, some outfit for an astronaut or something like that. Or they might say, help us figure out how to garden on Mars or whatever. If you've seen Mars, I'm probably getting started. So they have really great challenges, and that's one of the most best fun hackathons I think I've ever attended was NASA Space Apps. I'm a big fan of that. So although I think they're going a little too big now, and their sessions are getting a little too long now, but they do a great job of attracting people by setting up simple challenges. And many new people are attracted to that hackathon for that reason.
So I think to take this out of the tech spin, which is like the token statement that said every entrepreneurial talk, the ability to create a company today is so much cheaper than it was 5 and 10 years ago. It's on the young entrepreneur out there, I guess that falls on me. So with that, I think that there's a high side and a low side. The best part of this is that there are so many other solutions out there that are targeting these niche markets and niche issues. So you can go on and you can find something fairly easily. On the flip side, there are so many people that are trying to target the same things that if we're all coming to you, you have to make a choice as to who to go after and who to really support, which makes it harder to find dollars that are actually strategic rather than just random money that has nothing to do with healthcare or accessibility.
So I was thinking about Michael's question, but I think it applies to everyone. But like how you sell accessibility to like accessible design and technology to people who might not get why it's worth it in their business case for it. Or like how do you talk about that? People
Sure.
who don't really get it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll all kind of come at it from our perspective. I mean, I would say one thing as a corporate CIO, one of your sort of jobs is you're essentially the champion for non-functional requirements. right? So the business executives want, I've got a campaign to launch, I've got a product to launch, I've got, a medical management program to get to market. And you're the person that has to say, well, did you think about all the, they all have in IT wide, right? Security, accessibility, availability. So in one respect for me, it's another non-functional requirement that I've championed. So that's one of the things that, just from my perspective, I think about. But I think in terms of, how you champion accessibility particularly, I think, you had said it best, it's really, if something's not usable, right, then it's not, doesn't really have value. And I think some of the people, particularly when you look at some of the programs and people that we're trying to reach and touch, are people that are, some very sick, very chronic conditions, people with disabilities that have other conditions in their house. Those are the people that we need accessible solutions, and there's an easy business case to make for them. Those types of things. So I think for me, it's in one respect, it's one more thing, kind of a non-functional bucket that I've got to sort of be the champion for within the organization. But I think it sells itself for those kind of, particularly those target markets that are going into certain capabilities.
Just to follow that up, that specific point, the biggest issue with the usability facet is that it's not the customers that will be using it that are creating the solutions. So in our case with Dose, my brother who has diabetes is a co-founder. He knows what he needs. He understands what other people with diabetes need, and then we put that to work. Unfortunately, a lot of this side is more so business than it is good. And with that, many big companies that have no idea about the actual issue are coming out and pushing items that they're just like, oh, well, this makes sense. Right? The concept, and I'll continue to use the diabetic example because it's what I know best, but I walk into places and I'm like, oh, my brother has diabetes, and he then follows, and people are like, he has diabetes, he has a six-pack. I'm like, type 1 diabetes does not mean obesity. And like, that's just a simple example of general frustration because of the lapse of education. But that's another thing that continues to carry forward regardless of what that solution may be. And that's another reason why this entire event is so awesome. You guys are here because you're passionate about it, you've been affected by it either firsthand or through friends, loved ones, whatever. You know what's up and what's necessary. And this is where you get started to put things on paper and begin to have the way and find those solutions. And honestly, like, continue to push them. Don't let that end come Sunday afternoon. If you have a concept, there are people here with access. Talk. Don't be afraid to share your ideas and see if it can go somewhere. You're the ones that understand what those solutions are and need to be. And there are people out there that will listen, but it's usually the 20th or 30th person. That means you need to understand how to take no for the first 19 or 21 times before somebody else will have it back.
It's also cheaper to design the product ahead of time with everybody in mind, or as many groups of people in mind as possible, than to have to fix it later. And a lot of people manufacture many of the products that they later have to tweak. That's costly. And it probably will never be as designed as smoothly and as well, because it's just going to be bulkier if you have to add to it. So that would be one of my biggest reasons, or how to sell it to a corporation situation.
Leslie, I wanted to join this question to you, but again, anyone can answer. Since you work so much in the field of creating these beautiful wearable tech projects, how do you balance form and function and accessibility? Or how have you seen that done in projects that you think are successful?
Well, I'll say I never thought that my work was necessarily beautiful, and Leah Beakley, who she was the inventor of the lily powder Gina, which is the first stitchable one. She once called a project of mine so elegant. And I didn't understand what she meant, but I'm pretty streamlined. Like, I don't like a lot of fluff and detail. I mean, you're seeing this and it looks flashy and everything, but there's not a lot behind it. It's really minimal. And so I always look at design on being like mid-century modern or modern and minimal, low profile. And I would say that it might have also been because I've worked a lot as a decorator at IKEA for years and was looking at what's more streamlined in a flat packing box, not much. So there's a lot of that in me. But what's actually, when you asked the question about getting excited, when I think of design, I like design that's also fun. My stuff usually has either fantasy, like it's inspired by a movie, or it has some fun feature to it. And so one of the projects I was most excited about, which I created a link, I don't know if you can show it, but basically someone designed a prosthetic arm for children that you could attach Legos to. Now the important thing is, why did they do this? It wasn't good enough that the thing could just pick up things. I know you've probably all seen the prosthetic, the Iron Man thing, where the kid had one that looked like the Iron Man movie, and they made a big splash about it. Well, this is better than that, okay? Because this kid can attach whatever Legos he wants to the end and really just change the whole head of the way the thing operates. So it was just like, it looks like Lego Mindstorms hits this really conical, smooth-looking cyber thing. In fact, I think we called it a cyber arm or something. It's really smooth and classy. That's the best one I've ever seen. Is it 100% practical? No, but what it did was somebody asking the right question in the design process. What is it that the kid wants? The kid wants to feel cool when he walks around school. He doesn't want to feel weird, right? So now it invites friends, and it didn't also look scary, which is another thing. People don't like things that look scary. They want friends to approach them. So for a child, that was more important than the usability of the arm. Usability was second. And that is one of the best design products I've ever seen. I'll probably make my top 10. Every year I do a top 10 worldwide of what I see in wearables, and that would definitely be my list. So.
Design over function all the time. And seriously, it doesn't mean that function doesn't matter, but it goes back to the earlier point, which is if people aren't going to use it, you don't have anything to reply. And people use things that are sexy. It's not about being the best, unfortunately. Like if you look at apps and success stories, right? The stupidest shit wins always, which is really unfortunate. But that's because that stuff is the prettiest and the most user-friendly, and therefore the most engaging, and therefore retains users for the long term. And it happens to serve a purpose. It's the back end of that, which is why it's really that for me.
We call it human-centered design. And human-centered design is the cornerstone of the belief that human intelligence and need express itself in a variety of ways. So whether someone physically looks as if they're disabled does not mean that they're not intelligent, or empathetic, or sympathetic, or aware of what's happening in the universe, including Mars, around us. So I think that human-centered design, let's look at both. In the world of engineering, we have an engineering design process, right? There's a process for iterating using human-centered design. In the entire world, there are 14 grand challenges that engineers around the world have to address. And engineers have to use tremendous creativity and human-centered focus to solve the global problems of the world. That could be reverse engineering the brain right now, where there are parts of the human brain that are not firing on all cylinders to receive and process information in a way that allows people to make good decisions very quickly, to how do you reclaim water. Water is the new gold around the world, right? If you don't have portable water, you don't have sustainability. So human-centered design really starts with understanding humanity expresses itself in a variety of ways, but has some fundamental needs. And then the design process has to incorporate what we need now and what we think we're going to need 20 years from now.
Austin, I was wondering, what is it like as a user and a creator of accessible technology? Do you find either sort of different conversations you need to have with people that you work with to translate certain things? As a user and creator.
Yeah, it's interesting being both. Users and programmers are kind of on different levels. Yeah. So you have different conversations with them. The users are interested in the human stuff, how they use things, so the developers, the programmers are the ones in charge of getting it done. And I enjoy speaking to programmers because then they really get what they're talking about, some accessibility. And for me, I really enjoy giving speeches. I do a lot of public speaking, especially to programmers, because they see my talks and see some anecdotes and things. And they'll say, yeah, I get it. I'm going to make all my stuff accessible. So, it's, I've been programming all my life too, so it's kind of hard to stay away as well. Yeah. What else can we do?
Okay, tell us, I want to know more about the Apple Watch. Is it really like accessible? Does it pass all the marks? Or
Oh, yeah, it does, yes. It is voiceover, just like the iPhone does. And if you know a little bit about how to use voiceover on the iPhone, then it's pretty much translated to that. Versus using 1 and 2 finger gestures because of the smaller size. But yeah, it's all there. It's really pretty amazing. It's really good deal.
Another thing I was thinking about is so we're here at this like wearable tech focused hackathon, and like Dan said, software is cheaper to make now. The hardware, of course, there's the higher barrier to entry, it's a little more expensive, and as a developer told me recently, it's overpriced. So I feel like there's this like I don't know higher hurdle, or it's more intimidating. Can you guys speak to that at all? It's sort of like software hardware divide and why you choose, especially Leslie, and especially
I'm laughing because we're coming from working with the kids before we got here, and I was just complaining that like tutorials that are not well written and that miss at least 6 steps are really bad. So if you want to do your first hardware project, please just email me first and let me look at the tutorial you're considering. And yeah, there's bad parts in there too. It's like you really have to like do your homework and know like, is this or is this not a good project? And you can usually tell by the comments, but I don't agree that it always breaks. I think there's a lot of human error when you put things together if you don't really read carefully when you're first starting out. I mean, most of my stuff was self-taught. Some of it came from a few classes I've had, but there are a lot of good tutorials out there now, and they're growing every day that really show step-by-step procedures. So I don't know. I guess I'm not that intimidated because to me, it's like it's nice to be a developer, but like. I tell people there's nothing crazier than drawing this thing that you dreamed. And actually, one of mine did come from a dream, by the way. And then having that walk down a runway, like you dreamed this thing, you drew it on a piece of paper, and this thing became this 3D object. Like that's a thrill to me. I'm never tired of that thrill.
I think for us, the most exciting thing is working with different materials. So the material sciences that go into deciding what your product is going to be made of. So, for example, we're going to, because of Philly, this national challenge of creating prosthetic devices will now be automated. So we have to code, right? So we have 40,000 children across the United States learning how to code a prosthetic device, right? And so what's happening right now is it's this integration of the two, the hardware and the software. You have to understand the materials that are going to be more durable, that are going to last a little longer, that are going to be more effective for the end user. Right? And then you also have to understand how to communicate, how to make that communicate, how to communicate across developer teams. So I think that it depends on the form and the function. I think too, and Tommy just said, we are working with ways to change materials, again, to reduce everything from carbon footprint to the energy footprint. So there's a lot that goes into making a decision that you're going to create a 3D stethoscope, which is what we're doing right now. 3-hour stethoscope that we can send around the world, or a drone that we built. You'll see, we'll have drones tomorrow. So again, the materials depend on the function, but the number one issue for us is the materials that you use for the purpose and the design, right? So the design has to be sufficient to make sure that it does have some scalability, particularly in communities where you can't. Let me say something. So I work primarily with children of color, right? Don't have a lot of resources. What they're experiencing is resources that my freshman engineers don't get. So what they're doing is we're accelerating learning. But the number one thing that I see around their excitement is that their belief that they can produce something, one, that the entire world will need, and two, that it's not impossible to go into a dream space to produce a wearable device or a mobile app or a web app or something that means they can change their quality of life, right? Their lived experiences. And so we're teaching them how to use materials that they may not ever have had access to. And so you see a deepening appreciation of having that right to use. You know, how many of you use 3D printing, PLA, ABS, NinjaFlex, right? Some of us are coding with Arduino, some of us are using Raspberry Pi, Java, Python. In my world, most of these things, in the world I used to come from, which was classical music, I didn't know this. Now to know it, and to be able to put it together into places where kids are like, it's gonna be madness, you guys. It's gonna be madness. This generation, I'm really encouraged, but it does begin with understanding what are the materials you have to work with, what are the materials you can get access to, what are the materials you can create out of that you didn't know you about before, and bringing something to market that has value. It really does have value. You have to integrate those things across the market and so on. It's hard to do, I'm a little tired.
I don't know if you guys caught that, but 40,000 kids learning to go across the edge across the country.
This country is doing some amazing things that we just give ourselves credit. If we just claim it, we are amazing. You're not going to see this diversity, this amazing talent anywhere else in the world. That's what I love about being in building. But cool, you know, I was going to get open source data that takes the city. Okay, so I'm starting to wake up, right? Vitamin B is kicking in. I really vibe off the fact that the power of what's in this room to transform the city. I really know that. I live that, right? Juliana writes about it every single day. You read her blog and posts, right?
She also dreams about it.
And she yeah, we need to get out of Twitter. So that was my excitement around providing access to opportunities around.
I'll take it. Instead of, I look at it a little bit differently than hardware versus software, just for the roles that I roll in, and I instead say physical versus digital product. And they're just very different. It's not necessarily one's better than the other. You have to choose what you're interested in going after. So, a quick story to give you guys a comparison. So, I walked last year at Mark about 2.5 years ago. And the way that this company started was off the vision of creating custom sunglasses that people would sell based off of their colors. And I sold sunglasses wholesale in high school. I got a deal with Ray-Ban, amongst others, and made some cash that way. And then decided to invest $20,000 for 12,000 sunglasses from China to be shipped at the beginning of my freshman year of college. So I ordered those 12,000 pieces. Our factory tells us, okay, those are going to be in the States in 3 weeks. Awesome. Let's sign a contract with the fulfillment center. The fulfillment center, which is the warehouse that's responsible for fulfilling orders, says, okay, you guys are going to be charged a minimum of $2,000 per month. Meaning that's what the minimum of what you have to spend with us each month going forward. I'm like, great, no problem. The product will be in a month. Exactly. So I signed that contract. The glasses get to the country, and then they're held up by customs for 5 months. And customs charges you while they're storing your stuff for storage. Yeah, I like your face. That's how I felt too. So finally, in 5 months, they clear. I'm like, great, they're on their way. Little do I realize that sunglasses are actually a medical device through the FDA because they have UV 400 protection. Shit. 4 more months being held up by the FDA. So that's 9 months. All of you can do math. That's $18,000 down the drain because our fulfillment center is not so generous. On top of storage fees for customs and the FDA. At 9 months, the product finally shows up. Super sweet, they fold all the way, but that piece just wasn't strong enough. So we sold about 300 pairs, they all snapped. And there went the other $20,000 that was put out at the beginning of this company. That's physical product for you. So you enter and take on this inherent risk when you start to deal with physical things that are much, much harder to fix than something that's digital. That doesn't mean that digital can't go wrong and can't get fucked up. But it's a lot more risky to do something that's something you can actually hold in your hand versus something that you're coding. Yeah, so be careful when you're working with China or creating something.
So I would say it's not a space where we deal with that physical level, but I think the question that I think is interesting is when, and I think this would only apply to certain wearables, so things like prosthetics, I think would apply to those, but we think about sort of wearable, like with space and with biometric monitoring. Are there specific, is the world, are there custom devices, or is this world just gonna go to a universal platform? An Apple Watch and an Android, right? Sort of, so I think that's the question in some of these spaces, whether you're gonna see, again, it won't apply to them all, but whether you're gonna see like a universal platform emerge, right, in certain wearable spaces, and then really most of the the apps for those will be software, or whether you just continue to see like a lot of space for the custom hardware. Like you think about sort of, the Apple Watch being great product, but a lot of limitations in terms of what it can actually monitor from a biometric standpoint, very limited battery life versus competition. But you can imagine that will get better. And you can see how there's the chance that you get some universal platforms and more of the applications move from physical to digital for those platforms.
So I'm gonna ask one more question and then, sorry.
Sorry, I was just asking, I thought the new iWatch does have biometrics, but I haven't seen it yet.
It tracks your heart rate and your steps
Enough to say it does.
So I'm gonna ask one more question and we'll open it up to audience questions. So since we're in Philly, around Philly, it's Dr. Mason talked so much about Philly just then, that was a good segue. Is there anything about Philly's tech scene, the way we're situated in the world that makes Philly like a good place or the right place to pursue either accessible design, accessible technology, or wearable technology, or both? Do you feel strongly about any of those things? Or maybe are we in the wrong place?
Sorry, I'm more on that side of it, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I've had a real hard time finding people that do hardware hacking in Philly, other than 2 hacker spaces I know, and now Dr. Gracie's on 3rd space.
Which hacker?
High 76 and also the Hackery. So it's been hard to find those people, and one of the reasons why is we have great schools here. They're dumping out engineers by the tons, wonderful engineers, and they all moved away because unfortunately New York is fashion wearable tech kingdom. Even my friends in California, which is known as also like tech haven, said that if you're doing fashion wearable tech, it's all New York. My other tech friends are all in California, and the rest are scattered around the world, especially in Asian countries, by the way. So, and Boston, of course, because I mentioned Boston, hello. I just visited MIT's museum just because it's a dream for me. But so it's really hard actually in Philadelphia to be a hardware startup or a hardware group. And also, I've actually even been invited to talk to a panel of VCs that were floating from around the world concerning hardware. And they're very shy about that stuff. They're really not in love with it for exactly the risks that you were talking about. It's a physical thing, there's lots of things to go wrong. Now we've got legalities of what happens when biometrics might be hackable, because we're learning about people's information. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. But that's not to discourage you, because yeah, we do have the cool hacker spaces I mentioned. We do have Code for Philly. I still stage because I can work remotely from my house and do what I do, which is thanks to technology. And I think there's one thing that I will say about Philly that these other places lack. We are grunge, man. We are like the lowest of low here. So it's like, we don't have money. No, seriously now, we don't have money. We don't have money in the city to spend on this stuff, really. So all the good work that comes out of it comes because a lot of sponsors that are for this event are the same sponsors that sponsors all the major hackathons in the city usually, and they are supportive of the tech here. So it's happening, it's really happening, it's starting, but you really have to hang on and like form your collaborations. Form them early, get groups that you feel comfortable with, and then you can stay here. But otherwise, you might be picked up by another state or another country. It's hard. It is definitely hard. So.
Yeah, and I think that's going to vary a lot by the issue. So I think we're passionate. May have to speak. I think from the healthcare standpoint, Philly's got a lot of really large corporate assets that
yeah, we have the farmers for sure. So
between farmers, a number of health systems and academic medical centers, companies like independents. You've got a lot of large organizations in the healthcare space that I think are pretty active, in the startup community and looking for solutions to healthcare problems. So I think there's a place where Philadelphia I think could be much further ahead and could be one of the leading cities, if you will, in the healthcare scene.
I absolutely agree. I think that whether we're talking blue collar staff because we're gritty, grimy Philly. Sorry.
You look very bright.
I don't do grimy. You see my face. But I do appreciate the way Philly does things. We have 4 children in the city, and I think that one of the things that's important is that the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing is not necessarily because it's just a nice thing to do. I'm not that big a missionary. I understand that if I want to stay in Philadelphia, the quality of life depends on the caliber of talent that we produce in the city that's going to stay in the city. And so I'm producing talent, particularly looking at if we can get a taste, and 50% of them decide they want to go to engineering or computer science, and they want to focus on translating healthcare technologies, we have the capacity to build place-based employment in the city. So yeah, I'm on the front end of the pre-STEM pipeline. In my other role, I'm also responsible for making sure that we retain the students who actually make it into engineering. So my portfolio just grew, and then it's going to grow again. So the issue is around, the Creative Tech Works is like a learning lab. Every single thing we think of, I figure out a way to get the material resources to make it happen. So to prove that Philly deserves to be on the I-95 corridor and dominate. I'm very competitive, it's an American thing. And so I think that the idea around how we get claim identity in this city, there's a rich amount of resources here. I've flown below radar for the last little while. I'll probably stay, after this you will not see me again. Let my work speak for itself, and that's the young people who figure this out. You don't need to see me. What you need to see is that there's talent in this city, and that they know how to address the technology that's going to transform healthcare. That's one of our primary industries here. And it's also going to be the technology that displaces people. Right? And so what's the technology training that has to come behind to create the new jobs for those people who are going to be displaced? So I'm part of this whole ecosystem mindset around how to make this city extraordinary. I will have my home in Belize, but I will come back to see you.
So, do I agree that New York and California are a little more sexy right now? Absolutely. But their curve is going like this, and our curve is going like this.
Yes.
And when you look at what's here, it's not about why the other cities are better, but what you can do to harness what's around here to make your company better. And as a quick bragging right, I just graduated from Penn and Wharton. I could have gone wherever I wanted to go and made a very conscious decision to stay here for many reasons. One, from the technology and specifically the health side, there is no better city in this country for health tech, period. It's us and then the triangle down in North Carolina. There are more hospitals in this area, there are more health companies, there are more insurance companies, period. There are no questions. If you don't believe me, you all know how to use Google. On the general technology and startup side, it's cheaper, it's more reasonable, you can get a lot more bang for your buck if you do the hustle and find the right people to work with, and it's a hell of a place to build a business. And that mindset is what you need to succeed here, and if you don't have that mindset, then leave.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
It's just.
Yeah, it's just right. Yeah.
The other thing that Ashley said about the city around the tech scene is I have diplomatic immunity. I produce them on the one hand, and I have friends all over the place. But what I really find is that Leslie gets introduced to me by Yasmin Mustafa from Roar. You guys know Roar is roaring right now, okay? So make roar. Yeah. So the idea is that we can be successful because in the ecosystem, everybody's willing to help. There's no way these kids are going to finish their projects and Leslie not stepped in. I'm going to give her like total credit. She just came into these kids she didn't know. Some of them are a little challenging because they're divas. I've had them for a while. But Leslie helped make sure that they understood that there is an ecosystem that's willing to invest in their success. You're not going to find that in a lot of places. And I think it's that kind of accessibility that's sort of like an open source helping thing, that anywhere I've asked for help, the open source is on the side of the help comes in. So I think that Philadelphia is still a place where you're going to find that we are competitive. We need to be competitive, and I think the city could be much more competitive in its growth. in those areas where we dominate, whether it's traditional industries or whether it's high growth industries that have not been identified. But I think it's that, so I want to publicly thank you for showing up a couple of weeks ago, and she's been magical ever since, even coming into North Philly.
Thanks so much. I'd like to open up to you guys, if you have any questions for our panelists, or if you have ideas you want to float about projects you want to build this weekend. Sure, yes, in the front.
Me?
Yeah.
As an accessibility consultant, I hope that my dream is that accessibility will become an archaic term. And as we all talk about accessibility today and tonight, I think that what is weaving through the conversation is what the right thing to do is. And, you know, I'm kind of leading to a question, I guess, to the panel, but I think that, you know, the concept of universal design, you probably all know about that. But what is also kind of threading through and talking about, you know, from an insurance point of view, from, you know, what city we're living in, it's the right thing to do, and you know, sort of what is it? What are we approaching? What are we asking for? And I think that we really, all of us that are really interested in this topic, really need to be staunch advocates for. This is just, you know, it's just the right thing to do. It's the best for everyone, and to ask and demand that every company, industry just follows through. It's like, we shouldn't be asking or demanding. It should just be, it just should be is. I don't want to even have an accessibility consultant job, you know, in as soon as possible. I mean, and I also want to point out, from a person with, you know, and I don't want to be a cranky gal, but somebody with a visual issue. There are people on this panel that are talking about accessibility, and probably in the whole room, that we take vision as something that is given. People have pointed out, like, they're, you know, you hold up something to the room, and like, let's fold it all into everything we do and just kind of think about it. And I am so excited about this topic, and I'm also excited about Philadelphia. Lived in New York since 1986, and I love Philadelphia. It's like, it's the perfect city to live in, and we don't have to, like, want to be as good as New York, because I think it's just completely a very accessible and mindset city. And it's not exactly a question, but I just want to bring up that accessibility is, I'm hoping that we all think that it's not something that we're all going to be working toward. It's something that's just going to be is.
Thank you.
I guess it's a statement, not a question.
Do any of our panelists want to speak to that? Or?
I just like that you said something about it because I'm not even so comfortable with using the term disability. Like that kind of eats me out, and so I just like what you're saying because it's true. If we were doing the right thing, you don't have to label people. Like you're just doing what's right for everybody. It's no longer a label.
Yeah, there's so many examples of things that, were made to help one disability, but really help everyone. I mean, for instance, if you're blind, your computer and things talk to you, and then you say, oh, well, that's for the blind. And now, so many people in their cars need eyes for your faces to speak to them.
Asha? So I know we talked a lot about Philly, we talked about like, all the great things that are happening in the US, which is true, and then also specifically Philadelphia, which is absolutely true. Are there other ways in which the city can support these initiatives? Is it a function of connections? Is it a function of marketing nationally, globally to bring resources to bear? Philadelphia has its challenges, but we do have a convening power. And this is obviously something that impacts so many people beyond Philadelphia and beyond the US, frankly. So I'm just open to hearing like ideas, what we can do.
We just did a really good thing because we've been Hardware Summit, which does in Philly. That happens in different locations around the world. Last year was in Italy, and I could not afford to go, so I'm very excited by that. So that's already done. Shut it up. Keep it up. I'll take that.
Yeah, I think it's really all about, it's everything you mentioned. Right? I mean, I don't, none of this is, particularly when we're talking about, this all takes time, right? And I think we're talking about all different parts, building the profile of the city, right? That getting people to stay here, right? To graduate from our engineering schools, getting companies to stay here, startup companies. I mean, I think and it all sort of builds on one another. So I think it's really, I don't think there's any one thing. I think it's really all of those things between bringing conferences here, bringing some of the corporate leaders to bear, in the city, marketing the city nationally.
So
it's
if
really
there are
everything.
action items, is there like one thing on your guys' to-do list where you're just like, wow, I really wish the mayor could do this, or Archie could do this? Like, is there something on that, to-do list where you're just like, this is really like just bothering me, and can somebody please just fix this?
Something that would make it easier for companies and individuals to find roles that fit.
Yeah, my dream state is to start to map for Philadelphia. Philadelphia has the health, the EduMeds. It's also very heavy into construction.
Right.
It's also very heavy in tourism. And so if we could reverse engineer and identify for those traditional industries where the new STEM jobs are and how technology can increase the quality of their performance so that they can grow and expand. I think that there's a disconnect between, the last 10 years STEM has been this sort of boutique thing off to the side. And you couldn't really inform learning around engineering and computer science because we were focused so heavily on remediation and in such a large district where children are not performing well. My research shows something different. You put them in an environment of success and they actually accelerate. But having said that, I think that to calm people down around whether we're siloing off tech to this space by itself is let's go full in. I think this is putting out a couple of RFPs right now that evaluate the capacity of our existing traditional industries to translate new jobs. The number one issue is not talent development, it's job creation, right? We just don't know how to create new jobs out of what we currently have. And so if we could start there, that would be a dream space for me.
So supply and demand, connecting the two, right? And then maybe getting you involved.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a union and a non-union conversation. Yes, some, the young people I'm working with, if they're 19, they're making $40,000 an hour freelancing in Kansas. They don't have to go into a union grind, but they need to understand the value of organizing around rights. So I think again, the issue is this unhappy medium right now, us against them, sort of like the public school versus charter school debate. It's the same thing, STEM versus non-STEM stuff that's going on. This doesn't make any sense. Try to tear the city resources and segregate the city even more. So I think pulling out those career opportunities out of the traditional would be a really great first start. And even if we're paralleling the growth of entrepreneurship and tech startups. So I think that would create a happy medium.
Keep doing it, you.
And I think having unions involved in this conversation is actually quite powerful. And speaking to what you were saying, just developing a skill set and letting them have that talent when you're onboarding younger folks into infrastructure. They've grown up on Facebook and Google and stuff. Let's involve them in the conversation. So it's great. Philly Tech Breakfast is another good thing that happens where people have a really good place to showcase. But I almost feel like it's nice to see the new up and comers, but I feel like I wish the surrounding corporate entities that were literally right outside the city could come in more and see stuff like that. Or, I mean, I would be happy to hear their presentations to go, well, what's going on in your company currently? You probably are doing some things that we're not aware about. And then that would help start that conversation going more. I just feel like there's not enough cross-pollination between us and just, the tip of outside of Philadelphia.
Other questions? Okay, great. So, Ray.
And so my name is actually Neil, and I have two questions. My first question is a technology-related question. The second question is more of a general question. And I heard you guys were mentioning open data, open source data, and collecting information from wearable technology and things like that. And so using that data that you've collected then, the information then, figuring out how to, put that into apps or mobile apps or things on devices, and then using those for accessibility purposes. And that's sort of my first question. Have you seen any of that application so far? And the second question that I have is more of a broader question, and any deaf-related or other disabilities. Let's say people who have those, disabilities, quote, they've graduated into STEM situations, and they can't find jobs. Have you seen any of that in the field? And what can we do to, as an area, a region, to sort of promote and encourage that, the hiring of young people and saving, people with disabilities who have those skills and the training in those fields?
Well, I can speak to the first question. Actually, a number of us met because you're involved in a project called Unlock Philly that was enacting some of the accessibility data around the city. Some set of elevators and so I know there are some efforts there, and I was going to mention that too about what can we do as a city. I think certainly open data, the more open data we have, the better. Programmers love data. Things about the existing data and lots of record. So yeah, I mean the potential is huge. Things like OpenStreetMap, even a lot of apps now like tap into that. There's a popular app called Livestock that taps into that. So yeah, that's definitely something that is happening.
So sorry, is Blind Square like Foursquare?
It's well, it's a blind. It's a navigation app for the blind, and then and also it uses Foursquare's database locations for that. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna foreground this question a little bit, which is, so I was recently reading up on the disability rights movement more in the needs, and one of the lessons from that movement was you have a way of looking at the issue as a medical model where you're conceiving a disability as the mechanism which sort of on a physiological basis contributes to maybe seeing the world in a different way, or you have a different view of disability which is meant to provide equivalent access to a person who might see the world in a different way on the same level as everyone else. And we've heard a lot about maybe why it might be really cool to work in health and work in wearables for disability. But one of the things I want to ask is, are there ways that we shape the design of wearables to make them accessible that maybe miss the point, that might be going more towards a mechanism-generated approach where we're trying to somehow solve a physiological issue? Or is there a way where we're actually creating an equivalent level of access to see in the world in that way? And how will we inform tomorrow's technologies that gets at that second question of what does an equivalent level of access look like for wearable
I actually just came across the reverse, which shocked me and excited me. A lot of people are developing wearables and they become this like fixture on the person they have to rely on to do whatever it is they're doing. But somebody recently designed something using like a Google Glass product for autistic children that becomes an educational device because it's looking at facial gestures. And by looking at those facial gestures, then it can help create a label. Not the label is a good answer, you already know I'm not into labels, but like things like happy, sad, like they have a hard time understanding what does that facial expression mean. But the purpose of that device is that that child is not supposed to wear that device forever. That's merely supposed to be a learning tool that eventually goes away. So I really liked that because so often people are creating these things that you're almost like addicted to, right? Like I really like that the approach was different. Let's, help that person get what they need, and just respect that is what it is. It doesn't have to be something they always have to keep on. So see if they keep doing that.
Yeah, I just have 2 more questions. Okay, get into that.
I had a quick question for Michael. Sure. I'm a doctor. I work at Temple, and I have kind of a unique look at patients because I'm in surgery residency. So our patients at one end of the scale are like very well connected. They come in for a lung transplant. They've got 10 people with them that are in the support structure. And then at the other end, 2 cops bring in someone that's just been shot in the street, and and those patients inevitably never have a support structure. I think a lot of tech that gets developed, it's great to have an app on the Apple Watch that you can get credit with your insurance company if you do these things right, it's being tracked. But I was wondering, do you guys have anything in place to tailor financial accessibility to tech, or we're talking about accessibility, from user interaction, but
yeah, so I mean, that's a good question. So I would answer it kind of 2 ways. I mean, we've got some, I'll just call it general purpose, for lack of a better term, kind of outreach channels. So our mobile app, our corporate mobile app is a good example. So something like that's available to all our members. We want to look at, for something like that, is there can someone not afford a phone, right? So that wouldn't be part of what we think of there. But the other place we use technology, a lot of our really clinical applications. So there we were really funding the technology, right? Because it makes sense for us. So things like one thing that we've got in pilot right now is a sort of a pill box. You kind of get your meds mailed in a tray, sit it in the pill box. The pill box has reminders and reporting if you don't take your meds. So that's the type of technology we would actually fund, because we think that in that case, for a specific condition or specific disease, there's a sort of a return, to be honest, on that investment that for us, for medical cost savings as well as keeping the person well. So in those cases, we'll actually fund the deployment of the technology in your setting. And we've done some pilots as well with some other wearables, kind of on a hospital discharge basis, where again, we would in those cases, fund those technologies. Thank you. So it really wouldn't matter whether they could afford it or not. We'd say that it makes sense for both the member and makes sense for us, so we'll pay for it in this setting.
Yeah, so we talked about how important design is and user friendliness. And for example, the Iron Man arm that looked really cool, but maybe wasn't the most functional. So when you go to create something, do you start with the design and add in your accessibility features, or do you start with the full understanding of what accessibility features you want and then build your design on that? So what do you start?
Well, that's this and it sort of is the the issue around how you approach these are this and that, not this or that. And so what's happening now is you're approaching design from human-centered design, you're really gonna get a full sense of where's that person, what the need is. And then you can point out the apps too. A lot of people are producing a lot of crap apps, but they never ask you much back. They went through the market research. But so you're doing some in design, you are doing the customer-centered research. What you need is you also have to be a bit of a visionary. You have to get into wires, tech crunch. You have to understand where things are going in all these different industries. Say, you know what, this is what it might be right now, but have you considered that your need might change based on this? Say it a little bit forward thinking. I think that's the creativity. Why do you say engineers are not creative? I don't get it. We've been with that. So the solution set begins with the person, the environment, the context, and then also, this is taking Billy to another level. There can be
To me, the reality of that is you can't do one or the other. It out doesn't work. You're not sitting here saying, I'm going to draw, and then I'm going to decide what I'm drawing. That doesn't make any sense. You're going to go out and say, okay, I'm going to draw this, and then you're going to make it look crazy. Right? So they always flow together, especially once you have a concept. Then it becomes the question of, do I add this button, or do I leave this feature in the background? That's where that design and user interface comes into play much more so than the front end, which is, okay, do I have all of these dials out and then decide what they're going to do, or do I need to do this?
Great, well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Can we have a round of applause? And yeah, I have just more food and drink. I don't know, are we kicking people out? People hang out?
I kind of want to take back home, but.
Okay, I'm on to okay, thank you. Have a great
Great
Thank you.